Like,
Oh, same.
I don't want to make content out of a genocide. I don't, and it's felt icky, but I really wanted to talk to you because you are so well read on this, and I think everybody here appreciates it because I don't know. I do not have an answer as to how we are supposed to consume what is happening
It's hard. Yeah.
and live our lives at the same time. Chat, do you know who this is? Wait,
Hi,
I
chat.
was about to go the wrong way. Do you know who this is? You might have seen her in such YouTube videos as the ones that we have watched on the stream. Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi.
You can do it for like half an hour if you want.
Okay, perfect. No. Hi. I'm Pixel's friend. And I stream, so I would love to be like a proper streamer, but I don't have the heart for it. I keep trying, but I'm not quite there. But in terms of this, so obviously I do a lot of content on philosophy, but my first love was politics. Particularly this issue. When I was in high school, I did Israel Palestine in my year 12 modern history class. And it just, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to drama school. And I was like, I can't. I have to learn about this and I have to know. So I enrolled in international relations with a focus on Middle Eastern politics and strategic security. And my language is Arabic. And then I lived in the Middle East for a while. And then when I got back, I worked for the Palestinian delegation in Australia. It's a delegation because Palestine is not a recognized state, so it doesn't get an embassy. It only gets a delegation. And I worked for that delegation in 2014, which was a fucked year for Palestine history lovers. Something happened called Operation Protective Edge. All of the little wars get their own cute, sexy code name. So I was there for Operation Protective Edge, which had been the most deadly clash in Gaza up until now. And it's extremely stressful. And so I do know quite a bit about the history of the conflict. And I would say, here are some things that I like to say. One, I understand why people say it's a complicated issue, but I disagree in that I think it's a complex issue, which I know sounds like, oh, same thing, what's the matter, right? But complicated to me suggests that there's like all of these dots with all of these strings in between them, and you have to work it out to be able to get to the end of the logic chain so you can find the answer. Whereas what's really happening is it's complex, it's more opaque and amorphous because that's not just a conflict, there's a conflict about a conflict. And one of the things that's really at stake in this conflict is the politics of memory. Who's remembering the story right? Whose story gets to be told? And what version? And you see that if you do research on Palestine, you'll see that there are people called the new historians even. So Ilim Pape is one of these people. And the new historians are called that because a bunch of files were made available that previously hadn't been available. And they completely changed the narrative of what happened at Israel's independence and the Nakba. So the reason it's complex is because you have to really understand what you're looking at and where it's coming from and what's informing it. And you need to be able to really know who the players are to get a sense of what's happening.
So it's really interesting for me because I feel like I have a better understanding of the conflict than I would say most people. But in comparison to you, I would still say it's incredibly rudimentary. And I feel like a lot of people struggle with where the history starts and picking a starting point, and people pick specific starting points in the conflict to suit whatever narrative they are trying to, I guess, push online. Would you have anything to say along those lines?
Yeah, 100%. Because it's like, it also comes, the reason it's so difficult to pick that sort of thing is that there are claims that are like, well, God promised us the land of the milk and honey, and we've been there since, blah, blah, blah. There's like a biblical timeline. And then there's a like decline of the Ottoman Empire and that kind of mandate period. Or do you start with independence, or do you start when they won the 67 war and officially won that territory? It's like, to me, what I find very fascinating is whenever Palestine blows up, there are two questions everyone wants to get to the bottom of, like, whose fault is it and how do we fix it? And I'm not sure if like you can, whose fault is it? I don't really care about, right? Like,
We're here now.
we're here.
Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah, it got fucked up. The how do we fix it? You can't get there unless you truly understand the politics in the meantime. And for some reason, I think it's just the way history is taught. It's like you are taught, this is what happened in the 67 battle. This is what happened in Yom Kippur War. This is what happened in the Intifada. And it's like, okay, so I'm seeing like a lot of people winning and losing laws, but what's actually happening with the politics? Like, when did settlements get started? When did they start building settlements? And whose idea was that? And why did they build settlements? And why did Jordan originally have the West Bank? When did they stop having the West Bank? And like, who is trying to have these first negotiations? When do we start recognizing people as, so for instance, everyone loves to talk about like Hamas are terrorists. I agree. They're Islamic terrorists. Okay.
Thank you for condemning Hamas.
I condemn them. I do condemn them. Let me know if my picture gets too shitty as well, and I'll see.
It's okay. It blurs in and out, but it's so fine.
Okay. And then, yeah, so it's like, oh, when do we start treating the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, as not terrorists? When do we start treating them as a legitimate political body, right? And everyone always loves to talk about that, but no one likes to acknowledge the fact that if you look at Israel's leaders, the Likud party, which is Netanyahu's party, comes from a different party called Harut. And the people who found Harut come from something called the Fighting Families. So they're all members of Irgun and Lehigh. Lehigh is also known as the Stern Gang. So these are the underground Jewish militia. And these people were all terrorists. Like just straight up terrorists. Like Yitzhak Shamir hung British people. And then he was the prime minister, and Menachem Begin, people were saying like, we don't want a terrorist fascist in charge. And it's like always interesting to me when they're like, yeah, but we can't negotiate with terrorists. And it's like, well, you have no problem doing it on Israel's side.
Yep.
But there is stuff like, if we're being, so the St. David bombing, that was the Lehigh. So that was like Yitzhak Shamir's group. But also it sucks, right? Because Arafat, who's the leader of the PLO, right? He's the old school. The cool thing about this conflict, sorry to just ADD my way around that.
No.
I'll come back.
I honestly think that this is so much context that people maybe being introduced to this conflict for the first time at the moment probably need to know, because there is a lot of misinformation and propaganda going around, and it's quite difficult to watch the discourse play out in real time, especially when maybe you've had these conversations previously, or your level of educated about the conflict.
No, but it's like, why would people know, right? I totally get it. But the cool thing about this conflict in particular is there are some things I think that are best to learn chronologically, and that makes the most sense.
Yep.
But when it comes to Israel-Palestine, it's such a personality-driven conflict. And it's such an ideology driven history in that, like, okay, so if we were just looking at Zionism, right? There are different kinds of Zionism.
Yep.
And so I don't like it when people say, I'm not anti-Jewish, I'm anti-Zionist. Because if you have a complex understanding of Zionism, sometimes that sentence doesn't make sense. Because what it is to form a Jewish identity. Zionism is about forming a Jewish identity. And I can go into that like much longer. But the Zionism that people are generally referring to is, I don't agree with settlements. And I don't agree that the Jewish people should have Eretz Israel, the whole area of Palestine.
Yep.
That's what people mean. But you got to look at the different Zionists, because a lot of them were super socialists. So the first people who were moving to Israel, and like the first government under Ben Gurion's still a bad guy, okay? Because even the good guys in this are bad. But Ben Gurion, Israelis, they're moving because they're very impacted by socialism, which is all about like the working class coming up and overthrowing. But the big thing for Ben Gurion is he realizes because Jewish people have been kept out of certain work, they don't have a working class. Jewish people don't have a working class. So they have to go to Israel and become a working class.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So that's why you hear about kibbutz and you hear about like working the land. These are people who are willing to create the land of Israel. And that's like part of their identity.
Do you feel like what leads to the kind of anti-Zionism takes is just that people really struggle to talk about this conflict without, like, people don't want to come across as anti-Semitic. So they use that framing so that it's clear that they are not anti-Semitic, and they're talking about anti-Zionism in a way that's so that they don't come across as like that. Does that
they're
make
trying
sense?
to be like, I don't hate you guys. I don't hate you. I don't want you dead. It's like, right. But it's what's better is to just have like a more precise knowledge of like what you're talking about. Yeah, I know. Sorry, just quickly. I come in peace. 100%. Everyone was killing Palestinians, right? That's why I said David Ben Gurion, bad guy too. Everyone was killing Palestinians from day dot. But there are obviously peaceful Zionists who see Zionism as part of their religion, part of their identity. And those Zionists very rarely are super attached to the land of Palestine. And they're not attached to this idea that they need Eretz Israel. They don't need the whole thing. And they're happy to share it. Like, these aren't the ultra Orthodox type people. But Jabotinsky, put this name in your head. It's important. Jabotinsky is a Zionist who, look, he's got personality. You spell it Jabotinsky. Jabotinsky. He becomes obsessed with like strong Israel. like this idea of like Israel is ours to take and we don't need any help and we have to be strong, because he's very concerned with the idea of like the nervous Jew and the way that Jews have been kept from like hard work. And so it's this idea that like always carry a stick. Everyone's against you. Everyone's going to get you. You got to fight for what you want. And you've got to smack people down. And, you know, it's a stupid person who relies on justice. You have to get justice for yourself.
It's very, it can be somewhat an empowering rhetoric, I'm guessing.
Highly masculinized, militaristic Zionism.
Right.
So
where does he sit in the political landscape now? Because I don't know this name.
Yeah. So Well, he's dead, so
Okay.
that's why you don't know.
At what period? At what period was he?
So he died in 1940. But this is why he's important. So he's one of the people who sets up the World Zionist Organization. He's one of the key figures in that. He also, his personal assistant, you're going to love this. His personal assistant is a man named Ben Zion. And Ben Zion is Netanyahu's dad. And he convinces Jabotinsky, because Jabotinsky really loved Britain. He was like, kind of had a crush on Britain. But Ben Zion convinced Jabotinsky, no, you need to focus on America. So he actually dies in 1940 in America. And Jabotinsky had set up a young man's sort of military youth group called Batar. And one of the strongest members of Batar is a guy called Menachem Begin. And Menachem Begin ends up creating the Irgun, the underground, naughty, scary kind of the army. Okay, so like the left-wing army in early Israel.
I've never heard such a sexy retelling of history, but like here we are.
So there's Ben Gurion. He's in charge of Yeshul, and he's in charge. So Yeshul is what we call Israel before it becomes Israel.
Okay.
So the person, Ben Gurion, is representing Yeshul, and then he becomes the first leader of Israel. And he is told you're going to need a defense team. So he sets up the Haganah, which is like the formal paramilitary for the Jewish people living in mandated Palestine. Okay?
Yeah.
So they're pretty good. I'll get to the Mizrahi Jews. Don't worry, I come in peace. The Mizrahi Jew end up mattering a lot to Likud, which is Netanyahu's party. Oh yeah, I was telling you about Jabotinsky.
Yes. Jabotinsky, whose secretary was Netanyahu's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Netanyahu's dad was like, Britain is done. It's over, bitch. We got to turn
We're
to
going to
America.
America. Yeah. Okay.
So Jabotinsky set up a young men's group because he was really obsessed with like all of these kinds of Zionists got a little bit into fascism. And this is before World War II, right? So they didn't know how bad fascism could get. And at the time, all the nationalist movements were also sort of fascistic. So they were kind of just following the trend.
Right.
So Jabotinsky, definitely a bit of a fascist. One thing he loves is ceremony. He wants people dressed up. He wants them marching. He wants them doing little things. Physical fitness. Being strong was a big deal to him. So he has something called Beta, which is like a young men's group. And a man named Menachem Begin is in there. Menachem Begin will be a prime minister of Israel later, but he also is the head of the Irgun.
Right.
Now, the Irgun is, so Jabotinsky starts something called revisionist Zionism because he doesn't like the main Zionism, who are all like, it'll be a slow project. We'll just slowly work the land and take it over, and it's no big deal. He was like, no, today we take it all. Okay.
Like, let's speed this up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we take it violently. And so there was the Haganah, which worked with the British and fought with the British and learned a lot from the British. But the Irgun kind of worked underground to fight against the British because they wanted the British out. And then the Lehi, also known by the Stern Gang, is run by a guy called Abraham Stern, because within the Irgun, there's a disagreement about who they should go and become allies with, right? Because the Stern Gang, the Lehi, hate the British so much that they're like, why don't we go to the Italians and ask for help? Who is like Mussolini at the time. Mussolini rejects. And then Abraham Stern is like, I know. I'm going to ask Hitler. And so Erdogan and Lehi...
Oh, no.
split over that. Hitler obviously does not help. Obviously. But like, that gives you a sense of like how radical some of these underground Jewish forces are.
Right. Okay.
And they're doing terrorism and they're having fun with it and it's all good. And then they kill some pretty important people.
Oopsie.
And then David Ben-Gurion gets mad and he has to punish them and be like, I'm going to shut you guys down. So things go quiet for a while. And Menachem Begin creates the Herut Party. He decides to politicize. And the Herut Party is made up basically of members of the Irgun. It's called the Fighting Families. So if you fought, you and your family is a part of Herut.
Okay, so we've come back around now to the Fighting Families, which I'm guessing most of that information then was to set up this explanation, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and this is what's interesting. Interesting to know. Netanyahu is not part of the Fighting Families.
Right.
But he is a member of Likud. So the Fighting Families, it works very much like a prince sort of thing. Everyone sees Menachem Begin as like the commander. That's what they refer to him as. He's like a big father figure. And the idea is that leadership of the party will pass down to the different members of the Irgun and the Lehigh as things go on.
Right.
But Netanyahu's dad didn't fight. He was a university professor who taught about the Jews' expulsion from Spain during the Inquisition. And there was a whole story about that like a hero story that people had told, that the Jews like triumphantly left because they were so attached to their Judaism, but he found out most of them just converted because they wanted to stay. And so people didn't like him because they didn't like his history. So Netanyahu, though, he spends a lot of the time that everyone else spends fighting in America doing Israel PR.
And they haven't stopped doing that.
No, it actually becomes the Netanyahu job throughout the family.
Right.
But he's really the first person to start being like, oh, here's why you should support Israel. Like, here's what you need to do. Like, getting like a lot of meetings and stuff. And so Netanyahu is actually Bibi. We'll call him Bibi for ease. Not because it's a cute nickname and we like him. Benjamin Netanyahu is bad, bad, bad man. But we're going to call him Bibi for ease.
Yes, we're not going to go with lawful neutral. Youth decay. Not quite. No.
But yeah, when he comes back to Israel, Menachem Begin, who at the time is the leader of the Herut, wants nothing to do with Ben Zion. So the dad Netanyahu, he really like ostracizes him and it makes him mad. So he goes back to America to make his own role as this like, I'll do all the PR then.
Right.
And when I'm just trying to think of the timeline, Menachem Begin is seen as a terrorist. It's a huge deal that he's voted in. This isn't until 1977, by the way. So the right wing don't get in until 1977.
Right.
Labour has a stronghold on Israel. And part of the reason they get in, there's a few things. Labour's doing poorly. So there's some issues there. But one of the things someone mentioned before, Mizrahi, so the African and Arab Jewish people who were being pushed out of their own country into Israel, they'd come into Israel, they wanted to participate in society, and the left parties weren't letting them. And Likud was kind of like, well, we'll represent you. And so suddenly they get a massive surge in support and votership because they have all these new votes purely because they decide not to be racist.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. And in what area of the country? Where is that? Is that coming in from Georgia? Whereabouts is that happening?
Like what countries are they coming in from?
Yeah. Where are they coming from? Are we talking like West Bank or are we talking like?
we're talking kind of all around. I'm thinking more Africa.
Okay.
Because like what you need to think is during the Spanish Inquisition, the Spanish Jews get pushed out into like Morocco
Yep.
and down into that top Maghreb region. So
Yep.
there's quite a lot of Jewish people across the Maghreb in like Tunisia, Libya, those areas.
Okay.
So the Mizrahim kind of come from those areas, and then a few come from places like Jordan, etc. But
yeah.
yeah, they're kind of
They're all over.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's Yemen, but Yemen's a particularly special case. The Aliyah of the Yemeni Jews is interesting. Oh no, sorry, you're right. I was thinking of the Ethiopian Jews. But yeah, so Menachem Begin is in. He's a bad guy. No, but he's just like a terrorist. And all of them really fucking hate any idea of giving up any land at all. And all of them slowly start to work more and more with the religious right. And you think Menachem Begin is bad. His follower Yitzhak Shamir is worse. He's the head of the Lehi. He actually hung British people and then had to go to jail for a while. And they're very bad. All of them. Like, this is me going, because I was going to do a full stream on this, but like it'll take me hours to go through everyone.
Yeah.
I
mean, I'd watch. Chat, would you guys watch? I'd watch.
I'm just scared of people coming in being like, you're anti-Semitic, and being like, I'm not. I'm sorry that you think your own history is anti-Semitic.
I just, if people can't see how complex this it is, and I would say there are very few people with enough understanding of the history to be able to, at least on online platforms like this one or even TikTok or any of them, like nobody has the skill set that you do to be able to present that information, at least in this area, I think. And I don't know, I would watch.
Thank you.
So just to kind of bring it back around for somebody at the IQ that I have,
it's huge.
What you're trying to explain as the overarching story here is that the Western world at the moment is willing to be like, Hamas are terrorists, while not acknowledging that for a large portion of Israel's history, there has also been terrorists as a part of the kind of the landscape.
I think what I'm trying to say is that it's like we have been presented and it's intentional that we're presented this, right? And it is Netanyahu's fault, and I'll explain why in a minute.
Yeah.
But we have been presented that here's this beautiful Western democracy that's just like us, and then here are the savages with their Islamic terrorism. And that's kind of how the story is told. And it's like every time the Arabs try to destroy Israel, Israel just manages to come back stronger.
But it's also an easy story to tell, right? In a post 9/11 world, like it's a very easy story to tell where you're painting all Muslims with the terrorist paintbrush. Yeah.
And what I think is interesting about that, more so than the like, oh, everyone's a terrorist. It's not so much that. It's like we don't negotiate with terrorists thing. It's like, well, literally all across the world through all of history, you do and you have. And Israel's a perfect example of that. These were terrorists that you decided you were ready to legitimize and work with. And it's so strange to me that now what was very much underground Jewish terrorism, which was a huge problem, it's just state terrorism, which is necessary because there's always a security issue.
Yeah.
And they do this a lot. So something interesting to know. I want to talk about Netanyahu for a minute, if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
So Netanyahu grows up in Philadelphia. he is back and forth between Philly and Tel Aviv. And he has an older brother, Jonathan Yoni, who he loves. Obsessed with Yoni. Okay, just like, you know when you admire an older sibling? Just like Yoni was everything. Yoni was meant to be the politician in the family. I can talk about Ariel Sharon and Yitzhak Shamir and Menachem Begin. Ehud Barak doesn't really do much for me. Ariel Sharon's a bit of a nutter, but like I just want to talk about Netanyahu at the moment because I think he really impacts the global discussion around it. So Netanyahu goes to fight, does his IDF time, comes back. His favorite book is The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. So because he loves that book, he identifies with the lead character, which is frightful. He goes into an architecture degree to be just like the lead character.
By the way, I assume most people know this, but if you are an Israeli citizen, you have to serve in the IDF. Just in case there were people in here who didn't know that.
Oh yeah, no, you have to. In Bibi's case, he wanted to.
Well, yes, but like, I'm yes.
No, but he wanted to because he loved his brother, and his brother was there serving, and he wanted to be serving with his brother. And after his uni, he went back and served again, and he was part of this elite force. And he convinced them to let Yoni get into the force too. And they were just doing bad people shit, bad bitch shit for ages. It's like little low-key terrorist jobs, no big deal.
You mean state sanctioned?
I'm talking like, okay, let's say I have a dispute over a border. And if something calms down, the international community might step in and be like, oh, you should have some peace. I might send Benjamin Netanyahu to go and plant a mini nuclear weapon to explode if things get too quiet.
Interesting.
Yeah, just that sort of thing.
But is this allegedly?
No.
Fuck. God damn it.
There's a really good book called Bibi by a guy called Anshel Pfeffer. He is left-wing. It is unauthorized. It is very good. Is it biased? Yes. But you know what else is biased? The book Bibi wrote about himself. So
read both. Balance out somewhere in there. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not allowed to talk about the conflict because neither of us have served in the Israeli army. Oh, forgot about that. Damn. I forgot.
Damn.
Anyway, what blonde hair dye are you using at the moment?
I'm trying to go a bit warmer, actually. I know that sounds ridiculous when you're looking at it right now.
No,
but I am trying to go warm.
No, I've gone a bit warmer myself. Like I think it's the vibes.
I think it looks good.
I think it's the vibes at the moment. Yeah. I forgot this was the extent of the conversation that we were allowed to have.
Anyway, I'd just like to take this moment of silence to condemn Hamas. Okay. So what I wanted to say,
we were talking we were talking about Benjamin Netanyahu, even though neither of us have served in the IDF.
But he has, and so is his brother.
A couple of times.
Yoni. So he goes back to school to finish school stuff after fighting with his brother. Yoni's actually a really sad case, right? At the time, Ben Zion, the dad, is really disappointed with Yoni because he's an intellectual. He wants his kids to be intellectual. He wants them studying, right? So for his son to go and fight in the war, it's like, that don't impress me much. It's kind of not a big fan of Yoni. But Yoni was going to be the one who was going to go into politics. But after the 6-Day War in particular, Yoni starts getting terrible PTSD. Just like everyone starts complaining about him. He is very bad to work with. He's unruly. It just becomes very dangerous.
Right.
And then basically at the time, back before Al-Qaeda ruined it for everyone, planejacking was like a real big fun terrorist activity. Okay. Not everyone dying. Just taking the plane for a while and holding everyone ransom for money.
The days before we had to take our shoes off at the airport, chat.
Yeah. The golden days of planejacking.
I'm getting so cancelled.
I'm sorry, it's my fault. I'm like, it's too edgy, and then it's like, no, be yourself, say it. And then I'm like, you can't say it on someone else's stream. But Yoni went to Uganda to retrieve a hijacked airplane, and he died.
Oh.
And people don't know if he died because he didn't follow orders or because... And then Idi Amin ended up killing a whole lot of Kenyans because they thought he was involved. But anyway, he dies. And I'm telling you, Bibi is obsessed with Yoni. And Bibi, yeah, this is his whole life. His brother is his whole world. This
is formative for him, is what you're saying, yeah.
Hugely, hugely formative. It becomes a project for the Netanyahus to make a cult-like figure out of Yoni, right? Like, Yoni is a hero. Like, he becomes part of the family ethos. It's like, this is what an Israeli man is. And then Netanyahu starts something called the Yoni or the Jonathan Institute, which is an anti-terrorism institute, which works mostly out of America and connects with like a lot of important American neocons. And they have conferences about how to stop terrorism. And at the same time, Netanyahu is working in America. He's been appointed. So he's not a diplomat, like a career diplomat, but he's been appointed to a diplomatic position, which is basically like head PR guy. He becomes known as the king of the soundbite. He's always on CNN. He's always writing for the Wall Street Journal. And he becomes very good at selling things. Larry King and him are great friends. Like, his job is very much to sell whatever is happening to the American public and to the Jewish diaspora. And to tell the story in a way where it's like, oh, obviously we should be on Israel's side. And this is particularly important during the First Lebanese War, also known as Israel's Vietnam War. Just a shocking fuck up of unbelievable size.
When was this?
1980.
Okay.
No, it must have been earlier. Let me check. It'll take me 2 seconds to check.
And me trying to make a timeline in my head of these things is...
Yeah, I should have made it... I would do this better. Lebanese War, Israel. 1978.
Perfect. And you can do this when you do your full-blown history streams that we're all going to watch.
Thank you. There's also like... I know you don't want to ruin our screen right now, but there's a sexy video of young Netanyahu. And you just immediately get why he was so popular. If I link it to you, do you want to watch it?
I mean, you can link it to me, although that means I need to figure out.
You don't have to watch the whole video. It's more just so we can get a sense in the chat if this is someone we think is hot.
Where are you sending it to me?
I'm sending it in Shit Talk.
State is a deadly danger to world peace because it is the surest guarantee of increased terrorism and war. However,
well, this is how people like this get into power, though, right? Oh wait, hold on a second. Like having charisma and people wanting to listen to you, it's part of it.
Yeah.
Hold on a second, chat. I was just turning off the peaceful jazz that has been keeping us all sane.
The idea may sound.
This isn't
I call
him.
now
We're not there yet.
as my first witness before the House tonight. Mr. Natai, is the issue of self-determination the core of the conflict in the Middle East?
That's
No, I
him.
don't believe it is. The real core of the conflict is the unfortunate Arab refusal to accept the state of Israel. And I think, as was mentioned earlier,
Does he kind of sound like Elvis, chat?
He actually sounds exactly like Netanyahu.
for 20 years the Arabs had both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And if self-determination were, as they now say, the core of the conflict, they could have easily established a Palestinian state then, but they didn't.
When did the issue arise then?
Well, for 20 years, we didn't hear a word about self-determination. And in fact, what we did hear, those of us living in the Middle East, was about driving the Jews into the sea. Now, after 1967, under the leadership of the PLO, the hardline strategy shifted to adopting a moderate, dressed-up slogan, which now talked in terms of first a secular democratic state and then replaced it with Palestinian self-determination.
You don't have to watch the whole thing.
But what this
It's
really
just to get a
means,
look at him.
contrary to what Mr. Aruri said, about 1977 being a changed year in the PLO's...
I mean, this does not surprise me. Like, I feel like in so many cases, people who find themselves in positions of political power were oftentimes very good looking when they were younger.
And this is the thing, right? Like, he's fresh out of MIT. He's loved by all the media networks because he's American in many senses, right? Like, he grew up in Philly. He went to an American university. He was working with Boston Consulting Group. He's very good at talking. He's very good at charming. But I feel like he's a mistake you make once. You don't marry that man.
I've never. I don't know. What are you talking about? That's so. What? Huh?
I'm just saying. You know he's bad. That's why you want him.
The
But that's why
voice.
you can only have him once.
The voice. The voice. It just sounds like Elvis to me. Like, do you know what I mean? It's got that same kind of. It's not the drawl.
It's
but
the wide throat thing.
It's the low. It's the low, slow, intentional. I know what I'm talking about. You're safe with me.
Yeah, see, that voice isn't "you're safe with me" to me. That voice is "I'm gonna make you cry."
Yeah.
Nothing you say will penetrate my soul, and I will always be the king of reason.
So true.
It's important, actually. I see you, I come in peace, being like Israel's committing genocide. No one is negating that.
We're getting there. We're getting to that point. We are.
It is factual to assume that all bad people are ugly, and we're just getting a read on where we sit with this guy. And I agree. Hannah said earlier, Yoni is hotter. He was hotter. He was a hero. But he really struggled. He was fucked up. And it's like, do you want the fucked up broken man who's never the same after the war? Or do you want the charismatic American Psycho type man?
And then you have the basis for Twilight.
Yeah, Yoni. I think you could fix Yoni. There's lots of books about Yoni. There's lots of movies about Yoni because they really went all in terms of trying to make him a cult figure.
Yeah. So where were we before we had to establish that Netanyahu was
hot.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Just was previously.
Chat fascism isn't sexy, okay? Neither of us think fascism is sexy, okay?
Can I say something wild?
Oh, no.
Or is that going to upset you?
No, you can.
You're right. Anyway. It's okay, guys. I'm going to keep that one to myself. Some need to be kept. Yeah, so Netanyahu has set up an anti-terrorism think tank in America. He's set up, he's working for the embassy. He's giving speeches on anti-terrorism. And he's also really involved in like getting to know politicians, getting into rooms with politicians. And the other thing he does is he really pushes hasbara, which is this, it's the Hebrew word for explanation. And it's not a neutral word. It's not like, oh, this is just how you explain it. It's like explaining things from your point of view so that people understand and sympathize, or they at least doubt what they thought before. And Hasbara is like a whole thing. Like you can get internships on Hasbara. There are certain organizations that work Hasbara. And like you can find Hasbara websites which are telling the Jewish diaspora, like, oh, we understand this is going on in Israel. Like, these are the talking points that we have for you when people are talking to you about it. And a lot of Jewish people like to do this because it's a way of feeling connected to Israel.
Yeah.
And if you actually look at early Israel, so if you're looking at like let me look at some of my early Zionism. 1 second. You have to understand that Zionism as a thought process came out of Eastern and Western Europe at a time when Hegel was really popping off. So a lot of them were trying to understand what it meant to be Jewish outside of religion. What connected Jewish people out of religion. And that's where Israel ended up coming in as like an end point. It's like we have the history connected to this land, and then we've all been spread apart, and what binds us together is that homeland, is that, you know, thing we want to go back to. So like that connection to the homeland is really big in terms of their self-definition of their identity as a Jewish person.
Outside of religion, more in like community and Yeah.
It's like we belong somewhere in history. There's a future for us and there's a shared past, and we have these shared things. Like it's nationalism without a nation in the early days. It's like we define ourselves as a nation, and I feel Australian, but if Australian didn't exist, but all of these people had the same experience as me, but now that place didn't exist, right?
Whereas for us it would be like getting a Bunnings sausage on a Saturday morning, but
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like, okay, so for instance, in America, there's a very strong idea of like being an American Italian or Irish American, right? There's this real sense of the other place, even if you're there. It's like that, but on steroids.
Okay, radio, that makes sense.
Even if you're Irish American, you've never been to Ireland. If someone starts shitting on Ireland, you're going to be like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's my people.
Yeah. Okay, I understand.
Right. And so getting that diaspora, organizing that sort of stuff, getting to be like Netanyahu becomes the go-to Israel guy on American TV.
Because he's so charismatic.
Yeah, and he speaks perfect American English. He's this like weird, it's really interesting because like he's kind of an outcast in Israel because they don't like his Americanisms. They find him a bit slimy, a little bit untrustworthy. And of course, the party that he goes into is Likud, and they are the fighting family. They have things known as princes. These are the men who are meant to take over power. They fought. They're brave. And so Netanyahu didn't fight. Like not the way they fought. There's no Erdogan in his blood. There's no Lehi. And so, yeah, when he wins power, it's the first time he sucks. It's bad. But like the point of looking at the history of like Likud and right-wing Israeli politics is it makes you understand like not only the ideology of these people, which is militant, devoted to Eretz Israel being the full Israel. And that definition can change depending on who you talk to. Some super religious people say it goes from the Nile to Iraq.
Okay.
Some people say it goes both banks of the River Jordan. some people say it's just all of Palestine.
Right.
So, yeah. It's important to know that...
Do we know what Netanyahu considers that?
Netanyahu is a strong Jabotinsky guy. So for him, he doesn't want to give up any of Israel, right? He doesn't think he should have to. What's problematic about his current government, and every Likud government since Menachem Begin through to Netanyahu gets progressively more right-wing. Because like us, they have a parliamentary system.
Yep.
But it's filled with much smaller parties.
Yep.
And so you end up having to make coalitions with smaller parties that are not representative of many people. And so then you have this huge influence of these people that don't represent the most of Israel, but you have to capitulate to their demands because you rely on them to form government.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Netanyahu isn't their real name. Their real name is Milikowski, but the dad chose Netanyahu as his writing name because it means like the chosen one or something.
Bibi did bring a flag to the UN recently that had Israel taken over the Palestine region, right?
Yeah.
A map.
Yeah.
So
classic.
I'm guessing
Itamar Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, these are the really scary ones in his current government that are okay, just to do some modern politics, right? The people who could be an alternative for Netanyahu is a guy called Benny Gantz and a guy called Yair Lapid. Okay? Both of them are center-right. The left at the moment is non-existent in Israel. It's in shambles. Okay? Yeah. Benny Gantz doesn't have good thoughts about a two-state solution either. He don't really want it. He's pro-settlements, but I ultimately think the difference between Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz is that Benny Gantz is interested in the he's more interested in what's best for Israel than his own political career, right? So, when this war broke out, Benny Gantz is Benjamin Netanyahu's biggest political opponent. He could have swung then. He could have been like, I'm taking over, coup, you fucked up so hard, I'm the leader now. But instead, he went, put me in your war cabinet, and my only rule is that Itamar Ben-Gvir and the people further to the right can have nothing to do with it. Huh. So I think he actually was making a protective, even though Israel is committing war crimes, committing genocide, doing ethnic cleansing, I think it'd be worse. I think if he wasn't in, it would be worse.
He's trying to moderate a very, very bad situation.
Yeah, he had the choice to go himself or go Israel, and he went Israel. So I truly believe, way worse. So when I was working for Palestinian delegation, that was Operation Protective Edge. They got to stop naming their operations like men's deodorants.
So catchy.
No, the best one is in like the 67 war.
Wait, just side note before you do that. I actually bought a candle that smells like men's deodorant. It's called Boyfriend.
Oh,
you
needed it.
It actually smells really good.
I bet it does. I want to smell it.
Anyway, continue. Sorry, side note.
No, I was going to say in 69, there was Operation something of the stout-hearted men.
Sexy.
See, just these stupid sexy names. Operation Pillars of Galilee. Just like stupid names. Anyway.
It's all in the branding.
During Operation Protective Edge, Benny Gantz was in charge of Gaza and doing the Gaza thing, and Gaza got fucked, right? It was terrible. It was shocking. It was so bad. I was crying every day. And it is absolutely, that is a walk in the picnic compared to what we're doing today.
Yeah, what's happening
Yeah.
now.
And Benny Gantz, who was running it, was getting in trouble with people like Naftali Bennett, who were meant to be like more left wing, for dragging his feet and for moving too slowly and not going hard enough. So even though I don't, like, at the end of the day, he's right wing. He's still right wing, but he is, like, I don't know if you've heard this, but Netanyahu, when Bill Clinton met Netanyahu, he was like, fuck does he think he's talking to? Because, like, he won't negotiate. He won't budge. He won't move. He won't do anything. He does what he wants to do. He's really hard to work with.
Yeah.
There won't be any peace with Netanyahu.
Right. So, I don't even know where that brings us to talking about where we are now and where this goes and what we're seeing happen, because if that is the case, well, I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that they don't even think that a two-state solution is possible at all.
Yeah, a lot of people want a one-state solution. I mean, it's something that will have to be, I think the idea that we have to, now we've got, like, this war can't end until we come up with a solution. That's not going to happen. There will be a process to coming up with a solution.
How have you, can I ask, how have you felt about Australia's response to this? How did you feel about the...
Disgusted.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Disgusted.
That was my...
To the point that, like, I'm a card-carrying Labor member. Okay, I know you, I think
I'm not,
Greens,
but
right?
it was a pretty black-pilling moment for me. Like, when I saw, even like Penny Wong's statements at the moment, they've been really difficult for me.
So I wrote a letter to all of my members and senators, which I'm updating to write a second letter about how that they're criminally culpable for assisting in war crimes. And I explained what they should be doing, how they're not being representative of their constituents, blah, blah, blah. I'll send it to you in case you want to pass a copy around to any of your friends and you guys can just amend it for your members.
Please do.
So Anne Alley, Queen, she can stay. Ed Husick, King, he can stay. Tony Burke, King, he can stay.
The rest?
Fuck him. Tony Burke, he gets on the radio.
He did. He got on the radio.
He defends his people. He defends his constituents. He said, why the fuck wouldn't I fly the Palestinian flag? This is my electorate. They're grieving too. Their grief matters. I'm going to fly it. And I send him a little message. I'm like, thank you so much for standing up for the Palestinian people. Finally, some moral strength in the Labour Party. And he follows me back on Instagram. And now I can never post again. Because what if I lose him?
Oh no. Oh my gosh, you can't. What? Thirst traps? How are you going to do? What are you going to do?
I can't. Because he's there. I don't want to lose him.
Fuck.
Every time someone good follows me, it's never exciting. It's exciting for half a second and then it's like a responsibility. It's like a cage. It's like... It's like the best thing ever has happened to you and you're going to lose it just by being yourself. So just stop existing.
It's okay. I posted a photo from a legitimate nest yesterday. So, I mean, look, it's fine.
But it was cute. It was relatable. It was... You were doing something.
Yeah, but like Tony Burke doesn't follow me, so it's fine. But Ed Husick does. So...
Yes. We just have to be like, can you fucking talk to the rest of those bitches?
It just
all of them.
Feels like, yeah.
Anyway.
It was a really black-pilling moment for me, and it took me a really long time to get out of the hole and be like, okay, what the fuck can I do? Because it feels disgusting. Like nothing.
It's disgusting to do that right after the talk about the voice to suddenly be like, yeah, actually fuck Indigenous people.
Yeah.
And just expect everyone to be like, oh yeah, he's going to try and do good stuff now that he fucked the voice. He's like, he's going to go to a fancy dinner while children are getting bombed and pledge his undying support to a colonial occupying state. And you expect anyone in your Indigenous voting base, you expect any of your Middle Eastern voting base. Like, I'm not saying you have to be like, fuck Israel. I wouldn't want that, right? Because that's not my view. We're a settler colonial state. You know, not every answer has to be those people have to be genocided and die. I know that's how people like to present it, as if that's the option. But it's like, you can just be like, what happened was a terrorist attack. We should take a pause to make sure we respond correctly. Our focus should be on getting back hostages and de-escalating. But of course, there must be a punishment for Hamas because we cannot continue having Hamas as our next door neighbor. You don't drop 460 bombs day one.
Can I bring up a few things and get your take on them? So can you provide some perspective on Netanyahu's propping up of Hamas over a period of time and how you've seen that play out at all? Or if you think that is part of the story? I'm just really curious. I actually don't know your take here.
Yeah.
Do you think Netanyahu has been involved in destabilizing?
Netanyahu's policy has always been divide and conquer.
Yeah.
So more than wanting a strong Hamas, and it's not his fault, like the Muslim Brotherhood, Yitzhak Rabin let them in. So it was long in the running. But when it came to like really what anyone in Likud is looking to do is find a way to stall the peace process. So, there are two leaderships. Guys, sort yourself out. We can't talk to you till you sort yourself out. Oh, they're doing terrorism. We can't talk to you because they're doing terrorism. And you have to prove to us that you're different. So you have to completely put all of your weapons down. Like there was something called, does the name Gilad Shalit ring a bell to you?
No.
So Gilad Shalit was an IDF soldier who was kidnapped by Hamas, and he was kept for a prisoner exchange, kept for 5 years, right? And they released just over 1,000 Palestinians for him. Okay. Now, one of the people they released was Yahya Sinwar, who is the head of Hamas in Gaza. Okay. One of the people they didn't release is a man named Marwan Barghouti, who is the leader of a party within PLO that has the popular vote by all Palestinians, is secular and non-violent. So to me, if I was looking at creating peace, I would take the one that has the popular support of Palestinians, has pledged non-violence, is secular, and I would release them, not the leader of the Islamic fundamentalist terror group. But if I wasn't interested in peace because that didn't serve me, then I would release the actual terrifying terrorist. But part of that also is like when Netanyahu, it's not explicit as like Netanyahu created and pays for Hamas, but like
no.
They work off each other very much.
Because the presence of Hamas in Gaza plays into.
Yeah, Netanyahu's Mr. Security. That's his thing. He's all about keeping people safe. Whenever something goes bad domestically for him, boom, Hamas sends rockets. It's like, oh, crazy that happened right now.
Do you think Netanyahu knew?
No.
You don't?
So I think this is one of those 9/11 things, right? Where it's just a series of bad luck events that make it look conspiratorial, even though it really isn't. So you have an over-reliance on technology, okay? An over-reliance on this fence on the wall, which is completely automated. And this happened in 9/11 too. It's what I call a lack of imagination. No one considered what would happen if they shot out the computers that work the wall, right? If you've got this technological wall and you shoot out the things that run the wall, that sucks, okay? The wall's not going to work. Also, Israel had started to give these economic permits to people in Gaza so they could go and work. And Netanyahu and everyone was under the impression that they really liked that. They were getting more economic opportunities and their societies are flourishing. And on the phone, okay, keep in mind, if you're a cockroach and you pass wind in Gaza, the IDF hear about it. On the phone, Hamas is saying, yeah, I don't know, we're kind of tired. Let's not do any terrorism for a while. Because, like, we're just not in the space to do it. And so they're picking that up and they're like, oh, okay. They're not going to attack us. Even though they've made kibbutz to practice raiding kibbutz. And they watch them doing that and they go, must be for show. Must be,
Right.
Must be like they're just trying to, yeah, we're terrorists to their own people. Because we heard them, they're not going to do terrorism. They're not on the place to do it. They like this economic stuff that's going on. You know, everything's going great. And we've got the wall. Because they have the wall, like everyone's talking like, why weren't the IDF there? Because the wall was there. It wasn't that it was like, oh, let's move everyone over to the West Bank. Yes, they did move people over to the West Bank. But a lot of that happened because they felt that this wall was 100% foolproof. Next fucking mistake. Everyone from the IDF, all of the commanders, were in the same base. So when Hamas got to that base and killed everyone, there was no one left to come up with a plan on how to fix it. Because all of the heads of that section of IDF were
already
all
dead.
slaughtered. Yeah. So now you've got people flying over the wall. You've got people bulldozing through the wall because the wall is now inactive. All of the heads of the IDF for the Gaza region are dead. You have nobody on high alert. An alert comes through, but they don't check it. It's not on purpose. It's just an accident. Stuff's going on. They don't see the alert. So you've got people murdered immediately. This is what breaks my heart the most. Riem, the festival,
Yeah.
was not meant to be there. It was meant to be in another part of Israel. And Riem is the head Gaza IDF headquarters. So you have the place where all of the soldiers are for the IDF, the Gaza Strip,
And a festival.
and then a massive festival in between. So the people who, and like,
It's horrific.
there were old people who were going to see the ocean and their car broke down in Sderot, and it's like they all got killed because their bus broke down. They were just going to go and see the sea for the day. They're a retirement village. And it's just like stuff like that where it's like they shouldn't have been there. Like, it's so heartbreaking. And like they still obviously intended to kill a lot of civilians, but it's just like, 400 people or so who if anything had gone different, they wouldn't have been there. But it's just so sad, but it's like one of those things where it's like a calamity that will only ever happen once.
Yeah.
Right? Enough things need to go wrong for that to happen.
This also sounds like you're condemning Hamas.
I mean, it's not your response. This is like, that would be like me saying it's your fault for getting raped because you should, like, no, obviously it's Hamas's fault. Hamas were planning to do terrorist activity.
It's just chaos that led to it being what it was.
What I'm actually trying to do is defend Netanyahu, which is very out of my character. Okay? Because I'm hearing all these people being like, he knew it was coming and he's using it as an excuse to get rid of the Gaza Strip. And I'm like, No, it was actually just a seriously bad fuck up that was a once in a lifetime thing.
Do you think he is using it as an excuse to get rid of the Gaza Strip, though? Yeah.
Any war, now that he's got... Okay, now he's fucked, right? Because Mr. Security has two options. Resign or overreact. And he's not going to resign.
That makes sense.
So he has to overreact. This is the 5th war in Gaza, right? So this has to be bigger than anything that they've ever done before. And if he gets his way, he'll either completely clear the north and take it as a security zone, or he'll push everyone into the Sinai.
It just doesn't feel like a war to me.
Well, it's not even I don't like to call it the Palestinian conflict even, because it suggests two equal sides. This is like if the American...
it's not feeling like a war. I mean,
imagine if the army...
Like Russia-Ukraine feels more balanced than this, and that doesn't even feel like a war.
Yeah, because it's two states that have two armies. This is the equivalent of like the Australian Defence Force going up against the Bra Boys. It's like, it's not the same, right? And I heard someone being like, oh, they're human shields because they don't have a tank. They're using a Mitsubishi. And it's like, crazy. Why do you think they're using a Mitsubishi? Maybe because they're a besieged terrorist organization and not a state-funded army.
What do you say to the people on social media at the moment that are like, oh, the Palestinian people voted in Hamas?
It's okay. That's a really good question because it's complicated.
Yes.
I need 2 drinks for this one.
Perfect. By the way, I have my own thoughts about these, but I'm just throwing out questions because I'm super interested in how.
No, but I want to hear your takes too.
Oh no! Yours are far more informed than mine, so I'm really curious.
I love takes though. Okay, so the normal response you hear is, they're all children. None of them voted for Hamas. The last election was in 2006, which is correct. I want to be clear that that's not just a Hamas issue. That is a Palestine issue, because it's the Palestinian Authority who are refusing to hold elections. And part of the reason they don't want to hold elections is because they believe that Hamas will win, because Mahmoud Abbas is not popular. Because he's been totally cucked. Okay, right. He does, like, people on the West Bank get fucked over so hard. He doesn't have a military. They're not allowed to use any violence. He does absolutely nothing to defend them. So they feel very little anything towards Mahmoud Abbas. The other thing is Mahmoud Abbas is 87, a little bit overweight, and he loves to smoke. So there's this issue where it's like, oh, he may not be around very long, right? So when people are like, oh, they didn't vote for Hamas. Yeah, they didn't vote for Hamas.
To be clear, there is no Hamas in the West Bank.
No, there's, right, yeah. Well, there are Hamasi people, but there's no government. Yeah. They didn't vote for Hamas, but I think if there was an election tomorrow, they would. Right. So I don't like using that as kind of like don't punish when people are like, well, they voted for them. It's not, the response isn't like, they're babies who never voted for them. The response is, well, what alternative did they have to vote for? Because you had one side that was giving up all of their rights and letting them be killed and do all of that and just do nothing and get cucked and they were realizing. And then you've got them in this open air internment camp and you're bombing them every 2 years. And like, something to keep in mind, 85% of members of Hamas have dead parents from a former attack by Israel.
Sounds pretty radicalizing.
Yeah. And so I feel like the Hamas question annoys me because it's like, these are the people who feed them, who provide their hospitals and education. Like 80% of them live below the poverty line. They're extremely reliant on Hamas. And that is why Hamas and Netanyahu get along so well, because Netanyahu gets a rocket when shit's fucking up domestically, and that gets to be distracted, and then Israel fires a rocket back, and then everybody needs Hamas all of a sudden to help them, to rebuild, to give them food.
Well, they give some semblance of leadership, even
Yeah.
if, yeah. Can you ask Jo what she thinks of people using the term genocide to describe Israel's actions, both recent history and currently?
Yeah. I think recent history, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid, both controversial. I agree with both of them. The genocide stuff, I'll put it on the record. I think this is turning into a genocide.
I agree.
We're at the level of Srebrenica. We are at the level of the Bosnian genocide. The language that is being used by heads of state, the destruction of, like, it's so funny, you know, people always like, there are this many women and children, and I'm always like, I love the men in my life. If men got blown up, I wouldn't like that either. But the reason there's a focus on women and children is because you're taking away future generations.
Yeah.
You're getting rid of the ability for this people to have
children,
a future generation, right? You're destroying their history. You're taking out lines of entire families. You're making it unable for them to flourish. You're giving babies so much trauma and injury that they will not be able to thrive through their life. This is what we call a genocide. It's done because they're Palestinian. That's why it's done. And it's been done since. Genocide is right. If you look at all explanations of genocide, if you look at how it's understood in the Geneva Conventions, if you look at the stages of genocide, this fits a genocide. I think people in their head, they think genocide, they think Rwanda, they think the Holocaust, they think levels of numbers, but it's not that. It's not just a huge amount of numbers. Like if people were dying at the same rate they'd been dying in Ukraine, in Palestine, that would be 30 people a day. But we're not losing 30 people a day. We're losing hundreds of people a day. How easy is it to improve the intent part? Well, luckily, the government of Israel has been making it incredibly easy. They keep publishing things like Amalek and saying that they're dogs and that it needs to be burned to the ground, and that all Gazas, that there is no such thing. They're saying they're all terrorists.
What do you say to someone that turns around and says, well, the Palestinians think the same thing about Jewish people, and use the phrase like from the land to the sea, like those sorts of things? How do you? Well, like I'm that's look at me playing devil's advocate on my own fucking stream. Do you know what I'm
No,
just
no.
I'm being like. I'm being the people on the internet.
Generational violence does tend to evolve into genocidal aspirations, dehumanization and all that. Also hi.
From the river to the sea, it's tough, isn't it? Because it's like one of those things where I've said it, which I guess makes me a genocide wisher. I don't at all. If I were Jewish, I'd be on a kibbutz so fast, you would not be able to catch me. I'd be out of here so quick. But from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. To me, this has always meant that the oppression and occupation will go away, not that there would necessarily be a genocide or an extermination of Jewish people, mainly because there was some annoyance. Like, if we're looking back before the Arab Revolt in the 30s, like, people were being welcomed in. There wasn't an issue. Early before the independence of the State of Israel, shit was good for the most part. There were little clashes here and there, and people were getting mad, but they were living together in harmony. And if you read The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Ilan Pappé, he's an Israeli historian, like, there was big fights in Ben-Gurion's cabinet because some people were like, I think we should coexist. And other people were very strongly like, we have to get rid of all of the Palestinians. So normalization is what Palestinians wanted more than anything. I don't think, I don't see it as genocidal, the call to be free. I think you're allowed to chant shit about your land and say you want to be free, because I was trying to explain this the other day to my friend. I was like, is there Palestine on the sea? Yes. Gaza Strip is on the sea.
Yes.
Is there Palestine on the river? Yes. West Bank is on the river. Is there Palestine in between? Yes. Jerusalem. So from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free, right? They should be free from occupation.
I mean, I don't think it's a hot take. I just think that a lot of the rhetoric I've seen on certain platforms has been using that to weaponize, just
saying it's a
as
call
a
for
weapon,
genocide.
a weapon against Palestinian people.
It actually got the two things that are kind of shitty about it is ADL. I don't know if you know, they're like the American Defense League or something. They started saying that it was a call to throw Jewish people into the sea. I think even maybe Netanyahu said that at one of the conferences. And then that got picked up as like, that's what that means. That's never what anyone said it means. And then obviously Hamas started saying it, and Hamas are very genocidal.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a mixture of things, but I don't think the thing itself is.
Closer to a bad faith interpretation of the
And I understand, like, this is something I think. So a lot of people, like, when they think Zionism, they think, Zionism came out of like World War II and the Holocaust. It's like, no, it started way before that. It started in the mid-19th century, arguably the best time for Jewish people. Right? Not so much in the East, in Russia, you have the Pale of the Settlements, you have pogroms and shit's bad there. But in the West, you have the French Enlightenment, you have emancipation, things are going really well for Jewish people, but they're still treated as outsiders. And now they have all these new problems of liberalism, and all of the traditional ideas they thought would fix their problems don't anymore. And so, where was I going with this? Zionism for them is about feeling like they belong. Like, sometimes I think I see the other where it's like, you're disgusting Zionist, but it's like, it's not. It's like, I want to feel like I belong someplace. And the sensitivity, if you look at pogroms, if you look at the Holocaust, if you look at all of Jewish history, yeah, they're going to be trigger happy when it comes to being afraid that they're back in a situation where this is happening again.
Yeah,
that's
of
why
course.
And that's why you get so often, Netanyahu does this all the time. He's like, it's a siege mentality. So suddenly everyone has to like bunker down, like, don't criticize Israel, don't do anything, we're under attack. Everyone work together. And it's like, this is not old for them. This is very new.
You can. I feel like I don't want to come. This is not me having sympathy for the reaction of Israel, but you can see historically where it comes from. I think most people can. On that note, what do you say to people who are like, oh, this isn't a religious issue? Like, so I've found it interesting that people have been kind of stepping away from the religious aspect of, I don't even want to call it a conflict, but this situation, if that makes sense. And saying that whereas it's hard for me because I'm a religion inclusive leftist, but at the same time, I am seeing more and more problems with dogmatic religions worldwide and how that is playing out politically, because they're not separate.
I would say it's like that religion plays a role in it, but it's not a religious conflict. Right? In that the first Zionists under Ben Gurion weren't there because of religion. In fact, they were very secular in that they were there in terms of Jewish nationalism, right? Like, they wanted to create a Jewish working class. They wanted to be a nation. Like, in fact, at the time, many religious people were very upset at the idea of people going back to Israel, because in the book it says that the Messiah will come and then everyone will go to Israel. And so there are some people who are upset because they're like, oh my God, you can't go yet. You're going too early. So all of these like Zionists have had to do work to be like, no, but we have to go early because we have to prepare. And then like at the time in the 19th century, Hebrew wasn't spoken. It was just a religious language. But then Hebrew became widely spoken because like, what are we going to do when the Messiah comes and we all speak different languages? We have to all start speaking Hebrew. We have to start doing it now. And so a lot of the early stuff wasn't Ben Gurion's faction. Yeah, they were completely secular. They were socialist Zionists. They were completely secular. Large parts of Zionism, for the most part, are completely secular. However,
also, just side note, before, I don't know, I get cancelled by the left, we are both pro-Palestine in here.
I just like talking about...
Just to fucking clarify before, you know, I have somebody going off at me.
They can... If you know what I don't understand? How the fuck are you going to understand something if you don't understand the person making everything shit? Like, if you want to walk around and be like, I'm anti-Zionist, if you don't know what the fuck Zionism is, what's the use in that? What's the use in saying that? Like, you're not going to compel anyone or convince anyone if you don't even know what you're saying.
I don't know. Maybe you can just put it on a t-shirt and that's enough.
You know what? It's because we haven't condemned Hamas.
This is true. Forgot.
For the third time.
Oh. What does pro-Palestine mean exactly? You want to take this one?
Pro-Palestine means... Have you seen that iShowSpeed guy who's like, free Palestine?
No.
Okay, I'll send it to you later. It means... I'm sorry. It means that Palestinians...
Man, having conversations on the internet is exhausting sometimes. Jesus fuck. Anyway.
Palestinians get to be free, and they get to have their own state, and they get self-determination. And maybe that's what it means to be pro-Palestine.
And maybe they're not, you know, ethnically cleansed, but
definitely. All in all, Yasser Arafat was a reasonable individual compared to the current lot. Yasser Arafat is such a fun guy. I refer to Yasser Arafat as a street cat because he knows how to stay alive. But yeah, the Palestinians are really lacking a Yasser Arafat type figure right now. I don't remember what the fuck we were talking about. We were talking about Zion. No, yeah, it's not a religious thing. However, as the governments of Likud and Herut, so it started with Menachem Begin. He started to talk about Judaism a lot more in terms of political life. That had never happened under Labour. So 1977, suddenly we're talking about Shabbat. Suddenly religious things are happening in the political culture. Suddenly there's a big respect for religion. This gets worse with Yitzhak Shamir. Menachem Begin is like quite a charismatic guy, very like melodramatic, big on speeches, blah, blah, blah. Yitzhak Shamir is a boring fuck. He hasn't got anything interesting working for him, so he has to make crazy coalitions. And he's the first one to start reaching out to the religious parties. And obviously, Likud brings in the Mizrahi Jews. Mizrahi Jews are more religious than the Ashkenazi Jews that are coming over because of socialism. So Likud is already increasing religion into politics. By the time you get to Shamir's last term, we have the most religious, ultra-Orthodox parliament we've ever had. We have someone called Meir Kahan come in. He's from Brooklyn. You have these Brooklyn rabbis who are fucking crazy. Nuts. Crazy religious. And they're coming over to Israel
like
and they're
Orthodox?
getting seats.
You mean like full Orthodox?
Okay, like, yeah, like, well, the problem is some full Orthodox people don't want people in Palestine at all. These people, Meir Kahan, so Kahanism is what Itamar Ben-Gvir follows. It's like crazy settlements, violence, like, oh, just they're Palestinians, then just kill them. Take their house. Just like, and these people are now coming in and they are, because they're necessary to hold the coalition government, they end up getting an extraordinarily high sway. And that's a trend that we see as we go through Netanyahu get only worse. So the far right, the ultra-nationalists and the fundamental religious groups get more and more sway, even though they represent less. So religion matters in that it is overrepresented in governments and their views are over-catered to, but the battle itself isn't religious.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for answering my question that I asked.
Anytime. I don't know why my nose is so itchy. I'm sorry, I keep touching it.
That happens to me a lot too.
Good.
So because of Netanyahu's relationship with America, do you think that the constant conflict in Israel plays nicely into America's military-industrial complex and the way they see themselves as, I guess, a moral leader of the world, sort of, if that makes sense? I'm really curious as to how you see this on a geopolitical scale as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is like Netanyahu's thing since he was a wee boy child is terrorism. It's a threat. It's a threat to all of us. 9/11 did great things for Netanyahu, right? In terms of getting America to really sign on and believe this idea of like, we're your only friend in the Middle East. It's us. Like, we're the only democracy with liberal principles. We're your friend. You know, like, you can use us, protect us from Iran. Iran's the enemy. So it definitely helps the military-industrial complex. But you also have to consider that, so with the Abraham Accords, which were the Trump attempt of making peace in the Middle East, he was trying to normalize with places like Saudi and UAE, etc. And they were normalizing because Israel uses Gaza as like a laboratory for their surveillance equipment and their smart technologies and their weapons. So a lot of high-class weaponry is developed in Israel as well. So even though Israel gets all of its funding from the US, a lot of stuff a lot of intelligence is developed in Israel as well, which is why people wanted to normalize, because they wanted to be able to use the tech.
Yes.
And why, I don't know if you've seen that weird relationship that's popped up online between Israel and India. They now have like a military alliance in terms of selling each other military goods.
Well, Australia does that too. So.
Yeah, we're a disappointment. We're a deep, deep disappointment.
Yeah, I told you guys she was my smartest friend. I did tell you. Like when people were like, "Oh, why are you having John? Does she know about this conflict?" Yes.
Just this one. I actually don't know about everything. There's actually a lot I don't know about, but I also develop like get obsessive.
Do you know what I wish my brain did that your brain does really well? And it remembers timelines and facts. I conceptually like ideas and interrogating ideas in a conceptual way, I do okay at. But if you ask me to rattle off names or dates or places or names of organizations over a long period, I would struggle. My brain doesn't work that way.
That's boy memory. It's your memory is fine, right? You remember concepts. And you remember arguments that were good, and you remember how things made you feel, which means you feel conviction, right? You know, right? You know, I'm actually also not good at remembering dates and names and stuff. I have a piece of thingy open here that I can look at, that I can remember if I find a person. So the way I do it is I'm like, Menachem Begin, Nixon type, terribly bad man, but you'd probably get along with him. And then I'll be like, Yitzhak Shamir, boring, would not get along with him. Boring, 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 boring. To like, you know, place them in my mind like that.
You got to give them a feeling.
Yeah, it's like, that's why I want you to look at young Netanyahu and realize he's a one and done guy. And this is the big mistake of Israel. They've been with him too long.
It has been a long time, hasn't it?
He's the longest serving prime minister.
I mean, look, there are fascist tendencies that become very appealing. She doesn't love you. We're seeing it globally at the moment. Except for in, I think it was Poland, where we've seen like a little swing away from, you know, the right. But, I mean, even New Zealand seems to be having a little swing towards the right at the moment, and we're just behind.
The thing with Netanyahu as well, I was trying to explain this to an idiot last night. And I rarely call people an idiot, but this person deserved it. Netanyahu didn't win because he's popular in the last election. He won because of some random technicalities where the threshold for being able to get a seat was increased. So two parties that would have got seats didn't get seats. If they'd gone with other parties, they would have got those seats. Then they would have had an extra 7 seats. Netanyahu won by 8 seats. And his party, the anti-Netanyahu bloc, would have been able to block him out of power. So it's more the disorganization of the left paired with how far Netanyahu is willing to go right to stay in power, because he has the craziest people in his government. So it's not a sign of like, people love fascist Netanyahu. It's like hard politicking.
Yeah. I thought about putting Israel Palestine in the title, but I didn't want to deal with what that would make chat, because this is an educational thing for me and you guys, and it felt smarter to do that instead.
That's like every day I'm like, I'm going to stream on Israel Palestine, and I try and like hype myself up, and I'm like, you worked in this area, you know this, you can do it. And then I like get on Twitter and I'm like, sad about all the dying babies, and someone's like, well, what do you want to do? What's the alternative? I'm like, I'm not ready for this fight. I don't want it.
I think that yeah, that's the difficulty. This is why we are prone to the occasional mentee bee, because it's not easy, and you should not have imposter syndrome when it comes to this. There are a lot of smart people in my community, and there are a lot of well-read people in my community, and I don't think anybody would call you not well. Like, you've worked this situation, you've worked with these people.
I wanted to be a spy before I realized that I did not want to work for the fucking government.
This is something we had in common, although I was much younger than you when I wanted to be a spy.
I unfortunately wanted to be a spy way too late for it to be cute.
I mean, we might come back around.
Yeah.
Who knows? Twitch streamer, great cover for spy.
I want to be a quadruple agent. I just want no one to know if they can trust me. I know everything.
Yeah, same. We could do that anyway.
That's so true.
Yeah,
just socially.
we're already there.
Yeah. Okay, I feel better. Wait. أهلا وسهلا، أنا اسمي جوانا، درست اللغة العربية في جامعات، لكن لا أنا أفهم أرمية، أتكلم فصحى فقط. الحمد لله. ما شاء الله. Yeah, I noticed a lot of white people aren't saying inshallah anymore. What's that about? Everyone's backed off their inshallahs. Not me.
The memes
But
on the internet.
See you. See all of you.
It came around on TikTok. It was a big thing on TikTok.
People aren't saying they're inshallas anymore?
No, but it was a big thing. It was a TikTok trend for a while. Did you see?
No.
Oh,
I'm stuck on Taylor Talk. Not that I love being on Taylor Talk,
no,
but
I
like
love
sometimes
Taylor.
you're just like, blah, 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 I want something else.
Chat, do you have any more questions for Joe about what is going on in Israel, Palestine, before we move on to talking about Taylor Swift? Because women, we have two sides. And
wait, I wanted to tell you.
And we have to balance things
We have to balance.
out. Reading recommendations and thoughts on media coverage.
Reading recommendations. Ilan Pape, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. He's a left new historian, so you might want to balance him with Benny Morris, who's a right historian of that period. Anthony Lowenstein is an Australian who's written on the Gaza laboratory, how weapons are developed in Gaza. I read a really good book recently, actually, called by Colin, wait for it. Colin Schindler, The Land Beyond, Promise Israel Likud, and the Zionist Dream. Oh, the Bibi book by Anshel Pfeffer. He's a writer for Haaretz, and he wrote a book on Bibi, unauthorized biography of Bibi. So good. Yeah, they're the ones I can think of off the top of my head. There's a Noam Chomsky and Ilan Pape talk to each other, but that one doesn't necessarily do it for me all that much. But I do genuinely love Ilan Pape. And, actually, you know what I'm going to give you? I'm going to post something in your, can I post something in your Discord?
Yeah, go to town. I'm sure everybody would appreciate that.
Okay. Share, copy link, and I'm going to post it. Where should I post it? It's a useful stuff.
200 IQ?
Yeah. There you go, babes.
Thanks, babes.
Have fun with that.
I don't know what it is.
It's a collection of pretty much every book written on Israel Palestine.
There you go, babes. Chat, what a gift. My God. Don't say women don't ever do anything for you.
Exactly.
Some light reading for the people.
Yeah, always. Oh, and the media coverage is shocking, obviously. Yeah. But you have to understand, it's hard. It's hard. Because media is owned by people. And when you own the media, you have a lot to say about how things are covered. Oh, what I wanted to say is, did you see the Israelis wrote on the side of a missile, "This one's for Chandler Bing"?
Oh, I didn't see that.
I'm not for that.
I'm not for that either.
I'm not for Amy Schumer.
Oh, no. Oh, my God. Amy Schumer.
The girl is ill.
Look at the trepidation Bella and Gigi Hadid have had to have around releasing statements. And meanwhile, Amy Schumer.
1,000 children are rapists.
I really hope she just becomes irrelevant very soon.
I have a theory.
It's pick me. It's like full pick me, but
I have a theory, but I'd like to these views do not represent Pixel's views. These views are not.
Chat, do I need to move into the secret scene? Maybe I need to move into the secret scene. No, it's fine.
What's the secret scene?
It's one that can't be recorded on VOD.
Oh, that's so funny. I was just going to say, I don't know if any of you are keeping up with Israel's Twitter account. or the IDF's Twitter account.
Yeah, it's an interesting time.
So my theory is that might be being run by Amy Schumer. I can't explain it any other way.
Oh, the cope is so edgy and it's so bad.
It's like, it's so funny. IDF, what did they, I sent this earlier today to someone. They tweeted, the IDF tweeted, if you're only tuning in now, hi.
Hi, this is what you need to know, TLDR.
You're a month into your genocidal campaign.
It is absurd, right? Right? Like, I feel my connection to reality at the moment is constantly tested because the things that are happening around me are so insane that I don't know how to fit them into my brain. Like the fact that we are having a conversation about ethnic cleansing and but it's being tweeted. One of the governments is tweeting and being like, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Like
what is sending me bonkers is legitimate war, but the Twitter account and the Instagram account is spending their time starting a beef with Gigi Hadid.
Yeah.
Timing?
But terrifying.
Like, start telling me where the fucking soldiers are. Why are you fighting Gigi Hadid? Leave her alone. She's got her mum to worry about.
Like when people say like the apocalypse will be live streamed, that's not actually far from the truth. Actually, there was a topic we didn't cover. There was a topic we didn't cover in that we didn't cover the evangelical Christian perspective of what is going on.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk about that at all. Do you want to talk about that just for... By the way, you can leave at any point, but I'm having a good time, so...
Well, it's interesting. So a lot of people know the history, like they'll know of the Balfour Declaration. But what they don't know is the people who did the Balfour Declaration were all extremely Christian and anti-Semitic. So their reasons for giving the lands to the Jews was to fulfill their own religious ideas while also getting Jewish people out of England.
Yep. Because, like, what is it? Revelations or something? Where it's like the return of the Jews to Israel is like a part of Jesus coming back to judge us all.
You know what else is so funny that I was learning about? I don't have it in front of me here, but it might have been Alkali is one of the Zionist forefathers. Oh yeah. Okay. So he talks about the fact that you have to be careful because there are two messiahs. There's a fake messiah that comes first.
Oh.
And then a second messiah.
Wait, is Trump the fake one?
Nah, this is in Israel.
Oh.
The appearance of Messiah, son of Joseph, whose acts will be characterized by terror. God, I can't read. Terrestrial conquest and not by miracles, suggests in a symbolic way the necessity for a secular practical activity preceding the appearance of the Messiah, son of David. So they can get you with a fake Messiah. So just know that.
Shit.
You have to be very clear. Are you son of Joseph or are you son of David? Because I won't fuck around with any son of Joseph. I'm prepping for the son of David.
That's so, yeah, shit. Well, at least we know what question to ask now.
Yeah. And yeah, a lot of people were like, it was very interesting because pretty much everyone who was international who helped with the Zionist project was anti-Semitic and wanted Jewish people to have their own place so they would go away. And the liberal Jews at the time really fought against Zionism because you were like, we're always going to be an outsider. If you give us a place that we're from, then we'll always be aliens. But the argument that the other Zionists had back is you already are always aliens.
I mean, technically we're all aliens, I suppose.
I feel like an alien.
Same. On a daily basis.
I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm dead, and the way that I determine that is I see a lot of dead birds and there are a lot of bugs around me. Do you ever have that feeling?
My psychotic breaks look a little different, Queen. But I do I've experienced the void.
Oh, wow.
But I do sometimes think that things are getting so absurd that there is a potential that I am in the bad place.
Yeah. Okay,
You know?
so we're both there.
Yeah.
We're both there.
Yeah. Did you enjoy The Good Place?
The TV show?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it. I know, and I knew you'd react like that, but I couldn't bear to lie to you because it's ethically wrong.
Oh my God, you're so moral. I respect it so much.
Couldn't do it.
Thank you for
I
being.
had to tell you the truth.
Thank you for being so moral, Queen. That's
Anytime.
That's why we're friends, because we're both so moral,
So moral, so good, so virtuous.
so virtuous, and everybody knows that we're so virtuous as well.
Yeah.
Because we've condemned Hamas like 15 times already. So
But we should do it again. We should, just quickly.
I'd
just like to condemn Hamas for their actions on October 7 and any further actions they may take.
In all seriousness, I do too. Honestly, this was very informative for the first half and fun for the last 20 minutes.
We had fun. Yeah. It was great.
Look, the entire last couple of weeks has been extremely heavy, and I haven't really known what to do, and everything kind of feels a bit icky. Like,
oh, same.
I don't want to make content out of a genocide. And it's felt icky, but I really wanted to talk to you because you are so well read on this, and I think everybody here appreciates it because I don't know. I do not have an answer as to how we are supposed to consume what is happening.
It's hard, yeah.
And live our lives at the same time. So
yeah, exactly. I don't. Oh God.
And I'm not saying that to be like, oh my God, poor us, poor sad white women.
You are. Comfort. That's our job. That's our job. There's a genocide. Must be about us. Obviously, that's the job of white women.
See, and I didn't want it to come across that way. I feel like I have to put a whole lot of asterisks at the end of this content because people make so many assumptions. Like, oh, look at these two comfortable white women talking about a fucking genocide, like the privileged, stupid bitches that they are.
Okay, here's what I will say. I went to a talk by Sarah Madison, who's an academic. She used to work in like queer women's spaces. She now works in Indigenous spaces. And it was for 50 years of non-recognition. And I went up to her afterwards and I was just like, I'm really interested in like Indigenous Australian policy work. I want to like do this kind of research, but I feel like it's not my place. I don't want to like step on someone else's opportunities or anything. And she kind of cut me off and she was like, yeah, but you also can't abrogate your responsibility. Like, you can do it. You can't just be like, oh, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to be like the white woman talking about it. That is just saying not my responsibility then. And it's like, there are certain people that you can promote and you can do that. But like, for me, I was talking to my boyfriend because like, he was like, why are you getting so upset about this? I was like, this issue for me is my Trump. Like, this is the issue that I've dedicated years of my life to. I feel more connected to this than anything in the world. And no, I have friends in Israel. I have friends in the West Bank. I have friends in Gaza. So, but I'm not there. I'm not that myself, of course. But that is kind of good because it means that I deeply care, but I'm able to be somewhat dispassionate because I'm not overwhelmed and affected. And this conflict, more than anyone else, is a conflict that deeply hurts people. So knowing how to balance like the right level of care, it's important. There is stuff that we can do. And I think that it's like understanding people will be angry at you, and that's part of being a good ally. It's just like letting people be angry at you and learning from why they've got the shits.
Well, chat, can we all say thank you to Joe or the Silly Serious for coming on and talking tonight, because I know it was incredibly informative for me. Make sure you all go follow and subscribe to her, give her money, give her everything, and we'll all watch your stream when you do your history streams.
Thank you so much.
No.
Okay.
No, thank you. Bye. Bye.
Love you long term.
Bye. Love you. Bye. Jo is so balanced in the way that she talks about these issues historically. She is not one of the people who you can accuse of just spewing propaganda for the left. She is so well read about everything that has happened in that region of the world. And I understand that my questions to Jo were somewhat rudimentary, but they were rudimentary for a reason. One, because I am not that well read about what is going on over there. And two, because I understand that there are so many people who are even less informed about what's going on over there than me. So the questions I am asking her are the questions that are floating around. And I don't know, I think I did a pretty good fucking job. Like it was supposed to be a very casual chat. I did not have a plan or anything like that. I literally just asked the things that I have seen floating around based on the propaganda that has been spewed all over fucking everything.